coming to us live from Eldoret, where we actually have currently a procession headed for a church service for the late Catholic Diocese of Eldoret Bishop Cornelius Korir, and those are the events as we're listening, as we're following there. We have Daniel Kariuki actually who is covering that particular event. This is ahead of the bishop's burial slated for tomorrow. And just to read out details about his burial is at the Sacred Heart Cathedral in Eldoret, where Bishop Cornelius Korir will be buried tomorrow after a state funeral at the Eldoret Sports Club. He will be remembered and will go down in history as the peacemaker, playing quite a crucial role during Kenya's internal conflicts of 2007-2008 post-election violence. Bishop Korir will be buried inside the Sacred Heart Cathedral as per the Catholic Church tradition. When serving as a bishop dies in office, when a serving bishop actually dies in office. And just let me get quick reactions in regards to it, and perhaps you gentlemen here can tell us how you remember him. I'll start with you, Professor. Of course, it was a sad day indeed when, you know, the news of his death was announced following a short illness. Perhaps your comment on that, Professor.
First of all, I was not here in 2008, 2007. I was in exile. I only came to know about Bishop Korir from what I read in the papers recently.
Yeah.
And having grown up as a child in the streets as a Catholic, I would rather say that it's sad that a bishop who has been a human rights crusader passed on at a very early age. And what I would like to tell the Catholic fraternity is sending a message of condolences, and may his soul rest in peace.
Okay, Jeremiah. Actually, some here say, we saw the Pope saying that Korir's death has dealt a great loss to the church, and that is a message from Pope Francis.
First of all, I would like to pass my condolences to the whole Catholic fraternity and Kenyans at large. Bishop Korir has been one of the people who have stood for peace. He's not sided with any side in politics and all that. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking, even if you look at 2008, 2007, he's a man who stood for, actually he's one of the, was very fundamental in demanding for peace. So I think it's a great loss. It's a great loss to us as a nation at this time. And I urge all of us as Kenyans to emulate him. He's a man who stood for peace despite he never sided with any political divide and all that. He's a man who demanded for peace. He's a man who stood for integrity and all that. It's a great loss to us as Kenyans.
Okay. And him being a peacemaker, what messages do you think he would have for the country today, Steve?
I think first let me relay my condolences to the family and the fraternity, the Catholic fraternity, and to Kenyans at large. Now, having said that, I think the message, being a peace champion or a peacemaker, the message that Bishop Korir would have for Kenya, and especially at such a time, would be, we be united and shun from politics that are based on ethnic division and focus on politics that will build a prosperous country that is founded on peace and justice. I think that would be his clarion. It has been his clarion call throughout his peace building work. And I happened to meet him at some point, and I can tell you, he's a man who meant a lot of good for this country. He devoted his life to see to it that we have a peaceful Kenya, a Kenya where citizens are able to get justice irrespective of which religion they come from or which political divide they come from or which ethnic background they come from. And I think that is a legacy that should be emulated by all our leaders. Yes.
Okay. President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto have actually directed the government to actually have direct involvement in preparations for his burial that is slated tomorrow, and definitely we shall be covering that particular event. Perhaps we'll catch up with Daniel Karuki also in this live broadcast to tell us and take us through what to expect in today's program and give us more further details in regards to who is attending as well. So we shall keep you up to speed with that, and of course we shall be covering that particular mass live right here on K24, so do not miss that in case you're interested to follow the proceedings. Let's now just come back to our point of discussion, and that is the call for secession as proposed by a section of legislators aligned to the National Super Alliance. I believe we had that particular image. If we can just get to show it back, and then we shall continue with the images that we have on the screen. Jeremiah, that particular image, we're not seeing it for the first time today. It has been there perhaps even a few weeks leading to the repeat presidential election. And these are sentiments coming from the National Super Alliance, and their main reason, and even Raila Odinga talked about it yesterday, is to address the issue of exclusion.
The issue of secession, number one, is very insincere. It's not the first time that we are getting that. After the 2013 Supreme Court ruling, we all recognize that we had the people who said there was this common thing that Nyanza sio Kenya, Pwani sio Kenya, and all that. I'm looking at how they have divided the two states, the Central Republic of Kenya and the People's Republic of Kenya. And I'll simply tell you, this is trying to charge communities against each other. Actually, I'll tell you one thing. Whoever came up with this, it started with David D, and right now is Peter Kaluma. And I will tell you one thing: the people who've come up with this thing is trying to charge up communities, show them that the people who have mismanaged and the people who are making you poor are the people in the Central Republic of Kenya. So you that we are mentioning as the People's Republic of Kenya, the people who've made you poor are the Central Republic of Kenya. So at the end of the day, it works. Because the communities in there feel it is these people. But does it achieve what he wants? No. Actually, what we are headed to is making tribes hate each other. But at the end of the day, we will not have two nations. We'll still have one nation of people who hate each other. And Raila Odinga will not benefit. So at the end of the day, it is making this tribe feel we hate that tribe. Because if you look at the division and all that, it's not making much sense. It's not making sense at all. It is showing the people the reason why you don't have any of you people in leadership. It is the people in there, in the Central Republic. So if we divide this nation, we will have you people who will be in leadership. So at the end of the day, it is trying to use unorthodox methods to assess. And I looked at it, and I looked at what they are calling the People's Republic of Kenya, and I looked at Garissa, I looked at Lamu, I looked at Kajiado and Narok. At the end of the day, the people in Kajiado, majority of them are Jubilee, for the obvious reasons that are not mentioned here. The people in Narok, majority of them are in Jubilee. So what does it mean? The people in Narok and the people in Kajiado, if today they decide we don't want to be in the People's Republic, so it collapses. So at the end of the day,
sorry, Jeremiah,
the whole thing is not making sense.
Hold this, some events going on our screens. That is the body of the late Bishop Cornelius Korir arriving at the Sacred Heart Cathedral Church in Eldoret, where he'll actually be laid to rest. But today what we're seeing is a requiem mass for him, and of course in remembrance of him, and bringing the Catholic Church together as well as his family to just celebrate his life and times. We shall be covering that, just like I had mentioned. And of course he will be buried within the church as stipulated by the Catholic rules that a sitting bishop be accorded such kind of a bishop who dies while sitting, or rather while in office, will be accorded such kind of a funeral. Back to Jeremiah.
Good. So at the end of the day, if you look at Garissa today, if you look at even the leadership, the people who are voted in there are Jubilee. If you look at Lamu, majority, even the governor, although are Jubilee. If you look at Kajiado, majority, the governor and most of the MPs are Jubilee. If you look at Narok, the same. So at the end of the day, what they are trying to do is charge up communities against each other.
Okay.
So this is a recipe for war. Actually, and who is the beneficiary of this thing? I'll say this. Raila Amolo Odinga, not Kenyans, not the people in those regions.
So you're saying this is more of a personal interest here?
This is simply personal interest.
Okay. Professor, perhaps you can take us through the law, because here they seek to use Article 5 of the Constitution, as well as proposing to amend Constitution of Kenya 2010 under, that is Article 255, Section 1B, and Section 2 of the Constitution, as read together with Article 5, to redefine the territory of Kenya and allow for creation of 2 new countries.
I would stay those articles for my colleague here.
Yeah.
But I'll rather start it with the Article 36 of the Constitution, which goes to the freedom of assembly.
Yeah.
And whose limitation is through Article 259 of the Constitution. But what I want to come to it before anything else is, if I look at the drawings, and let me apply the international legal method, are fighting words, artistic expressions, or symbolic pronouncements unlawful? That's the first question. I'll repeat again. Are fighting words, artistic expressions, and symbolic pronouncements, which come in the form of a map being drawn that way, unlawful? Case law has dealt with that in the US, in the UK, and elsewhere. But if you look at it from the Kenyan perspective, if we look at the Constitution first, there's no article in the Constitution which talks of secession. If we jump into Ethiopia, if we jump into Sudan, and I'll start with the Sudan first. In Sudan, there was an accord which gave the people the right to carry a referendum, and that was carried up, and that's why South Sudan came up. If you look at the Ethiopian also, where Mengistu's regime was overthrown because of autocratic authoritarian regime, there was also a clause and an agreement between the previous fighters to secede by way of referendum. Yeah. Now, if you come to Kenya and you look at it the way it is, that should not be taken as a joke. It's a very, very, very serious methodology. It's also a very serious methodology that is in contempt of the Constitution. And if you look at the legality of that mindset, you ask yourself 2 questions. Is that reasonable under the Constitution? If the answer is yes, then why? But does that interrogate the rights, as you have mentioned, rights enshrined in the Constitution? Now, if you look at that map again, you'll find out that even though somebody can come up and articulate from the fundamental rights enshrined in the Constitution, what is the ramification of that map if a reasonable person like myself on the streets looks at it? Jeremiah has answered that question.
Yeah.
Ethnicity, tension, and overbreadth kind of mindset that is directed towards one tribe. And if you look at the drawing, the people have been left in there at the majority. They are the most populous tribe in this country, and those are the Kikuyus. So are we going to drive this country into a passport country, in that if I wanted to go and see my daughter's parents in Nyeri, I'll require a passport to cross over? Now, what if Northeastern Province? They have been fighting for the autonomy of that region. Will the fundamental groups in those areas, or will Al-Shabaab take advantage and also say, we are coming in the warlord style, like it happened in Afghanistan, and also start waging law from that corridor? What about MRC? What about the Pokots and the Turkanas who border southern Sudan? What about our neighbors in the other side of Nyanza, the Magufuli, who is not very friendly to the Uhuru government today? This, to me, I would sum it as follows. We need dialogue. We need dialogue. It's not the Raila dialogue. It's not the Uhuru dialogue. It's the people of Kenya's dialogue. Because there have been inequities that have been addressed in Dungu report. Those reports have not been made public. There have been a lot of myopics taking format in the current and previous governments that we need now to come out and talk and address these issues so that we can live in harmony. Otherwise, Kenya is going into a very dangerous path.
Okay. Steve, is this a direction we need to head as a country? And how did you even get here in the first place?
I mean, it's a sad affair. And like it's been said by my colleagues, I think that we should not take this matter lightly. You know, a section of Kenyans are talking, and some of them are feeling the narrative that is being perpetrated by their leaders is that narrative that says we are divided, the mainstream government is not taking care of our needs, you know, that the Kikuyu community is enjoying being in government and all that privilege in them. And this, I mean, our communities are not even benefiting from the current regime. And it's a very divisive sort of narrative. And I think there's need to have a very genuine dialogue. Yeah. And it's not a dialogue about Nusumkata, as it's been said, or a dialogue about Raila or Uhuru or whoever person. It should be a dialogue about the Kenyan people. We need to talk about how we need to move this country forward. There's a lot that is happening, and I think if we sweep it under the carpet of peace, then we're just postponing a problem that is going to explode on us in a way that we might not be able to really address in the future. Okay. And I think there is a need for our leaders to come together. I still come out to the issue of come back to the issue of dialogue and have an honest dialogue. Talk to their followers, talk to their so-called strongholds, and together come up with a strategy that can move this country forward. And for me, I think that even beyond that, you remember we had the issue of the TJRC, the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission. Yes. It was tasked to do a few, to get the public's opinion on certain issues. And some of those issues that they were collecting the public views about were issues to do with historical injustices and things like that. And those are some of the things that the people at the coast are raising. When they're talking about secession, they're saying, this region has been suffering from historical injustices. Look at MRC. The issue of secession is not a new conversation. It started from way back. Yeah. And I think it's time we start looking at it critically and not pay lip service to it. And I would like to, with due respect, to ask the president to really take charge. He's the president of this country, and he should not let this country go into where we are headed to. It's a very dangerous zone. He should come out and stamp his authority and call people to order, call people to have a dialogue and talk about the future of this country.
Okay. Anderson will be crossing shortly to listen into a press briefing, actually an event that is being attended by Education Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i. But before that, also on your sidelines, we are following the requiem mass of the late Bishop Cornelius Korir. That is actually public viewing happening right there in Eldoret. And we shall be giving you further details in regards to how the events will roll out for his burial slated for tomorrow. But today it's all about a requiem mass for him. This is happening at the Sacred Heart Cathedral in Eldoret, where Bishop Cornelius Korir will be buried. And of course, you know, we're talking about calls for secession, dividing the country at a time when also Cornelius Korir has a bishop there, has, you know, passed on, and he will be remembered as a peacemaker. Perhaps it would also be interesting to, you know, find out from my panel what his take in regards to, and I already posed this question, but his take in regards to secession would be, can we get out of this situation? Are there ways of getting out of this situation, Jeremiah, so that while it remains a discussion, we do not actually get to a point where it can be actualized in the first place?
One of the ways that I will tell you, I've seen one of the things is they are going ahead to collect 1 million signatures. After the 2013 election, they started the process of amending the constitution, and they went ahead to collect 1 million signatures. I will tell you one thing. It will take us another 4 years, or it will take them another 4 years to do that, and after that, the thing will be dropped. And
so it's dead on arrival, is that your take?
It will not work. Okay. It will not work, because even the people who are drafting this bill, if you get them away from the public and ask them, they will tell you, we are not sincere. We are drafting a bill basically for one man called Raila Amolo Odinga. We are not drafting a bill for Kenyans. We are not drafting a bill for the people we are mentioning. We are drafting a bill for one man. So at the end of the day, it will drop. Because at the end of the day, Kenyans will come to know this bill was not about us. It was about that man. And the same people will come and tell you, no, we thought we were being included. So at the end of the day, if they didn't collect 1 million signatures to amend the constitution, this 1 million signatures, they will not get. They will not. They will not.
I want us to take a short commercial break. Lawyer Paul will also be joining this panel, and of course he'll give us his take in regards to matters secession as we follow other stories making headlines this afternoon. And of course, we'll also be talking about Parliament and whether it will be able to achieve its role as currently constituted, given that they were actually forced to adjourn for another 21 days, and we shall tell you the exact reasons as to why that happened. Stay tuned. This is the Home Stretch.